What if I told you that deep within your DNA, there lies the legacy of a superhuman species? Ancient titans who could outlift, outlast, and outfight any of us today. For thousands of years, Neanderthals ruled the wild, surviving ice, monsters, and impossible odds. Today, we're diving into their world, the truth behind their legendary strength, the secrets science is only now uncovering, and what their story reveals about the power still hidden within us all. Even in the digital age, when every secret seems within reach, the past holds mysteries that continue to capture our imagination. There are legends that persist through centuries, stories whispered by the wind in forgotten valleys, and echoed in the half-lit corners of ancient caves. Among these legends, none is as tantalizing or as shrouded in misunderstanding as the tale of the Neanderthals, the enigmatic, powerful people who once roamed the very earth beneath our feet. Their bones have been unearthed by scientists, their story reconstructed piece by piece. Yet a sense of awe remains, an undercurrent of something immense that slips just beyond the grasp of pure reason. Imagine for a moment the world as it was tens of thousands of years ago. Not a world tamed by highways or towers of steel, but a place dominated by the wild, by shifting ice, dense forests, and creatures whose names now sound more like myth than memory. In this unforgetting landscape, a distinct branch of humanity survived, adapted, and thrived. Their reputation for brute strength has drifted down to us in fragments. A cracked rib here, a thick forearm bone there, impressions in the earth left by hands far broader and more powerful than ours. There is an energy in these remains, something elemental, almost electric, as if the very stones recall their passage. The question that keeps returning is deceptively simple. Were Neanderthals truly as strong as the legends say? Or have millennia of storytelling warped their image, turning them into giants in our collective memory? Scientists argue, archaeologists debate, storytellers speculate. Yet the shadow of the Neanderthal grows ever larger with each new discovery. Their power is the stuff of both bedtime stories and scientific journals, simultaneously mythic and real, a paradox that entices us to look deeper. Modern humans, Homo sapiens, often picture themselves as the pinnacle of evolution, the undisputed rulers of the planet. Yet just beneath the surface, there lingers a persistent fascination, even a quiet envy for those other humans whose physical presence was said to be extraordinary. You can feel it in the way children's books describe the ancient past, how television documentaries zoom in on fossilized muscle attachments, or how movies depict Neanderthals striding across the ice, shoulders like boulders, wielding primitive tools with effortless skill. But the real story is both more fascinating and more complicated than simple tales of muscle and might. Legends speak of men who could wrestle wild animals, women who could scale rocky cliffs with infants strapped to their backs, tribes who survived blizzards that would sap the strength of any modern athlete. There are whispers of people who, for a brief, glittering moment in history, possessed something close to superhuman power, a power forged in the crucible of adversity, refined by the relentless demands of a world where weakness meant disappearance. And yet, as much as these tales inspire awe, they also spark doubt. How much of what we think we know is based on evidence, and how much is the product of human longing for lost heroes? As new bones come to light and fresh traces of Neanderthal presence emerge from the earth, the line between fact and fantasy grows ever thinner. Some of the world's leading researchers recall the first time they held a Neanderthal skull in their hands, describing an instant sense of connection mixed with humility. These were not the clumsy, lurching caricatures of old textbooks, but individuals, complex, adaptable, fiercely resilient. Their story is not just one of strength, but of survival, ingenuity, and a stubborn refusal to vanish quietly. Yet it is that raw, almost mythical power that keeps drawing us back. What does it mean for a person to be truly strong? Not just by the standards of a gym or a sports field, but by the impossible tests of the Ice Age. Could the average Neanderthal have outmatched the greatest athletes of our time? Could they, as some stories claim, carry an entire deer on their shoulders? Or craft tools from the bones of beasts that would make a modern knife maker envious? The legends persist because they speak to something primal in us, a yearning for connection to a time when strength was more than metaphor, when every day demanded a hero's endurance. In the half-light of early morning, in a field strewn with ancient bones, a new understanding begins to dawn. We are not just curious about the Neanderthals, we are haunted by them. Their presence lingers, woven into the fabric of our own story, challenging us to rethink what it means to be human. Beneath the scientific questions and the pop culture exaggerations, there is an undeniable truth. Our vanished cousins were not mere brutes. They were beings of immense physical capability, shaped by forces that most of us can barely imagine, standing at the threshold of legend and reality. As we delve deeper into their world, examining every fragment of bone, every worn tool, every silent trace in the dust, we step closer to understanding not just what they were, but what we might have lost, and perhaps what still remains within us. The legend of Neanderthal strength is more than an old story. It is a riddle, a promise, and an invitation to look beyond the mirror and see the shadows of titans waiting to be revealed. The story truly began to shift one cold August day in 1856, deep in the limestone cliffs of the Neander Valley near Dusseldorf, Germany. Quarry workers, busy extracting stone, stumbled upon a collection of bones unlike anything they had seen before. Bones that would ignite both scientific controversy and the world's imagination for centuries to come. The remains did not fit neatly into any known category. They were powerful, thick, and strangely shaped, suggesting a creature both familiar and deeply alien. When a local teacher named Johann Karl Fuhlrott first examined the skull and limb bones, he realized with mounting excitement that they did not belong to any ordinary human or animal. Word of the find spread quickly, pulling in anatomists, naturalists, and the curious from far and wide. Among the early examiners was Hermann Schaffhausen, a scientist who instantly sensed the significance of what had been uncovered. These bones, robust and heavy, with prominent brows and a low, elongated cranium, seemed to whisper of a lost chapter in the story of humankind. Yet, for all the excitement, skepticism soon reared its head. Could these really be the remains of an entirely different type of human? Or were they just the bones of an unfortunate individual deformed by disease or hardship? The scientific community, locked into the comfortable certainties of the time, struggled to accept that such a being could have once walked the earth. Many dismissed the find as a curiosity, an oddity, or even a fraud. But as more discoveries followed, in Belgium, Gibraltar, and across Europe, pieces of the puzzle began to coalesce. The term Neanderthal quickly entered the lexicon, named after the very valley where those first mysterious remains had been found. Yet, with every new fragment, with every bone and tooth pried from the ancient soil, an insidious pattern emerged: the tendency to judge the unfamiliar by the standards of the familiar. Victorian society perched on the edge of rapid industrial transformation, was fascinated and more than a little frightened by the notion of a past peopled with forms of humanity both strange and wild. Caricatures of Neanderthals soon appeared in newspapers and lectures, depicting them as stooped, brutish, almost animalistic figures. Thick brows, wide noses, and strong jaws became shorthand for backwardness, as if a heavy bone was proof of a heavy mind. Science, for all its discipline and rigor, was not immune to the biases of its age. The first artistic reconstructions, drawings, paintings, and later museum dioramas showed Neanderthals shuffling through gloomy forests, dragging clubs, grunting, their gaze vacant and primitive. They were cast as missing links in the evolutionary chain, creatures left behind while Homo sapiens supposedly raced ahead, enlightened and refined. It was easy for people to believe, eager as they were to see themselves as unique and singular, that these ancient cousins had been hopelessly outmatched, destined to disappear before the march of progress. Popular culture only amplified the stereotype. For decades, the image of the Neanderthal as a dull-witted brute became so deeply entrenched that it took on a life of its own, shaping not just textbooks but also the wider imagination. Children read about cavemen who barely spoke, who huddled in fear, unable to dream or create. Writers and speakers used the term Neanderthal as an insult, a shorthand for stubborn ignorance or lack of sophistication. The bones, so eloquent in their silent testimony, were drowned out by a chorus of misjudgment. Yet, beneath the surface, the real story was always far more complicated. The power and size of Neanderthal bones pointed to something extraordinary, a life lived in constant battle with nature and adversity. Their physicality was undeniable, a body engineered by evolution for survival under the harshest conditions. But the narrative of brutish simplicity was persistent, refusing to yield even as evidence mounted that these were people of intelligence, adaptability, and even creativity. As the world's museums filled with plaster casts and reconstructions, the first encounter with the Neanderthal was forever marked by misunderstanding. But even in those early days, the truth was waiting to be discovered, layered within each bone, hinting at a story that would upend everything we thought we knew about the ancient world and about ourselves. For years, the image of the Neanderthal lingered in the public mind as a crude sketch, a distorted echo of humanity's origins, shaped more by prejudice than by evidence. Decades passed as scientists, artists, and storytellers alike leaned into the popular caricature, portraying Neanderthals as shuffling, wordless primitives, lost in the shadows at the edge of true civilization. But as the 20th century unfolded, the foundations of that myth began to crack under the weight of new discoveries, and the old story slowly gave way to something deeper, stranger, and far more captivating. It started, as revolutions often do, with the evidence itself. Archaeologists working in dusty caves and wind-swept valleys uncovered traces that simply didn't fit the old narrative. Alongside thick-boned skeletons were carefully crafted stone tools, each shaped with precision and purpose. There were signs of fire pits, their ashes layered over the centuries, a silent testimony to countless nights spent sharing warmth, cooking food, and perhaps even telling stories. The old tale of the Neanderthal as a mindless brute began to unravel, thread by thread, replaced by the undeniable marks of culture and intention. One after another, new finds forced the scientific world to confront its assumptions. At Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq, the skeleton of a Neanderthal was discovered buried with wildflowers, an act suggesting care, even reverence for the dead. In France's Dordogne region, circles of stalagmites arranged deep within dark caves pointed to rituals or gatherings that demanded not just strength, but planning and cooperation. The hands that shaped those stones and placed those bones belonged to people who understood the world in ways that went far beyond mere survival. Meanwhile, advances in technology changed everything. High-powered microscopes revealed wear marks on Neanderthal tools that showed astonishing skill, while isotope analysis of their bones suggested a diverse diet and an ability to adapt to changing climates. Scientists sequenced fragments of Neanderthal DNA, a feat once thought impossible, and discovered traces of their genetic legacy in modern humans. Proof that far from being evolutionary dead ends, Neanderthals were woven into the very fabric of our own story. In laboratories around the world, the story of the Neanderthal shifted from one of extinction to one of connection and inheritance. The old caricature grew harder to defend. Anthropologists who once spoke of Neanderthals as dim-witted soon found themselves marveling at the evidence for symbolic behavior: carvings in bone and ivory, traces of pigments and ochre, ornaments made from eagle talons and shells. No longer could scientists claim that art, ritual, or language belonged only to Homo sapiens. The line separating us from them grew thinner with every artifact, every ancient hearth or fragment of jewelry unearthed from the earth. Even the very bodies of Neanderthals, once mocked for their bulk and power, came to be seen as marvels of adaptation. Where once people saw clumsiness, they now recognized the hallmarks of a species built for endurance, strength, and the punishing cold of Ice Age Europe. Their broad chests and barrel-shaped rib cages spoke of immense lung capacity. Their thick bones and powerful hands of a life spent crafting, building, and surviving in ways that demanded creativity as much as muscle. The story of Neanderthal strength became not a joke, but a tribute to resilience and ingenuity. The most dramatic revelations, however, lay in the realm of the mind. For generations, scholars insisted that only Homo sapiens could imagine worlds beyond the present, mourn the lost, or plan for the future. Yet excavations at Neanderthal sites challenged this view. Scientists found traces of pigments used to decorate bodies or objects, and intricate marks etched onto stone, evidence of a symbolic inner life. Some sites revealed bones that had healed after serious injury, suggesting that Neanderthals cared for one another, nursing the sick and injured back to health. These were not mere survivors, but people capable of empathy, foresight, and imagination. With every passing decade, the gulf between stereotype and reality grew wider. The Neanderthal was no longer a footnote in the story of humanity, but a complex, fully realized character, a being whose world was rich with challenge and meaning. The more we learned, the more the boundaries blurred. Were Neanderthals truly so different from ourselves, or were we simply looking at distant relatives who had taken another path, guided by circumstance and necessity? In classrooms and museums, the old dioramas faded, replaced by vivid reconstructions based on the latest science. Artists and writers embraced the new Neanderthal, one whose face bore intelligence and curiosity alongside strength. Scientists now spoke of them with respect and even affection as kin whose story was not one of failure, but of adaptation and survival against overwhelming odds. Yet perhaps the greatest transformation took place not in the laboratories or lecture halls, but within our own collective imagination. The Neanderthal was finally seen not as a warning or a punchline, but as a reminder of the many ways life can be lived, of the possibility that humanity, in all its forms, is broader and more mysterious than any single narrative can contain. The myth was replaced not by certainty, but by wonder, a sense that, in seeking to understand the Neanderthal, we were also uncovering something lost and profound within ourselves. And so the journey continued, not toward an ending, but into deeper questions, and the promise that with every new discovery, the story would only grow richer and more human. The remains of Neanderthals are more than relics. They are the silent blueprints of bodies shaped by a world that demanded the extraordinary. For generations, these bones rested undisturbed beneath the earth, accumulating stories layer by layer. When the first fragments emerged from caves and riverbanks, the world was confronted not with familiar shapes, but with something both hauntingly human and startlingly alien. What set Neanderthals apart was not just the size of their bones, but the unmistakable signature of power etched into every curve and ridge. A Neanderthal skeleton tells its story in bold strokes. The skull, for instance, is a striking departure from what fills modern anatomy textbooks. Its brow ridges project prominently, casting deep shadows over eyes set farther apart than our own. The cranium stretches long and low, hinting at a brain that, on average, matched or even exceeded the volume found in modern humans. But it is the jaw, a heavy forward-thrusting instrument, and the wide, flaring nose that make the face instantly recognizable, carved by millennia of cold winds and demanding diets. Even without seeing a reconstruction, to hold such a skull is to feel the weight of an ancient world pressing back. Yet the real marvel lies below the neck. The Neanderthal rib cage fans outward, creating a barrel-like chest that signals not awkwardness, but a remarkable adaptation. These were lungs built for high output, breathing deep and often in the thin, frigid air of glacial Europe. Shoulders are broad and robust, the clavicles thick, forming a frame that supported not just muscle, but survival itself. The arm bones are dense, with upper arms and forearms both unusually strong and curved from a lifetime of repetitive, forceful motion. Even their hands seem engineered for another realm, fingers wider and shorter, the tips shaped for grip and leverage rather than finesse. Each wrist bears the imprint of constant work, knapping stone, pulling heavy prey, building shelter. The spine of a Neanderthal differs too, with vertebrae that speak of stability and sheer endurance. The pelvis is broad, the hip joints massive, providing balance and a solid foundation for powerful movement. Thigh bones are thick, almost club-like, designed for pushing through snow, climbing rocky slopes, or sprinting short, explosive distances after prey. Knees are sturdy, ankles solid, feet wide and arched for support in uneven terrain. Every detail, from the curve of the femur to the breadth of the heel, reflects a design honed not for comfort, but for confrontation, with nature, with predators, with the raw challenges of existence. In the hands of scientists, these bones become windows into a vanished way of life. CT scans reveal patterns of stress that map the daily rituals of the Neanderthal, the constant kneeling beside a fire, the forceful motions of butchering meat or shaping stone. Microscopic grooves and scars record a litany of injuries and recoveries, testament to resilience as much as strength. The arms and shoulders in particular tell a tale of ambidextrous power, with both sides showing equal development, unlike most modern humans who tend to favor one side over the other. This symmetry hints at a life spent working, hunting, and creating in ways that demanded maximum effort from every muscle. Comparing these ancient skeletons to our own, the contrasts are profound. Modern human bones are, by comparison, almost delicate, lighter, narrower, and built for efficiency rather than brute strength. Our rib cages taper, our jaws retreat, our brow ridges smooth over generations. While Homo sapiens can run long distances, our bodies are streamlined for endurance and versatility. We have sacrificed raw power for adaptability, building a physique suited to long walks, fine manipulation, and subtlety. In Neanderthals, we see the opposite, a body that trades speed for force, subtlety for durability, finesse for raw might. Yet it is not just size that distinguishes the Neanderthal skeleton, but a kind of sculptural clarity, each bone shaped by the demands of a specific place and time. Their world was not a gentle one. To survive, they needed every ounce of power evolution could provide. The heavy jaw and massive teeth ground tough roots and sinew. The broad chest fueled the furnace of muscle. The hands, almost like tools themselves, grasped, pulled, and broke what was necessary for life. Scientists have spent decades puzzling over just what these differences meant in practice. Did Neanderthals move differently, stand with another posture, use their bodies in ways we can barely imagine? Modern experiments, from biomechanical modeling to reconstructions by athletes and craftspeople, suggest a life that was physical in every dimension. A daily existence where the body was both weapon and shield. The bones that break expectations do more than tell of power. They hint at an entirely distinct rhythm of life, one in which strength was inseparable from identity. The Neanderthal skeleton is not just a relic, but a message from a time when survival sculpted every limb and joint into an instrument of endurance. It is a message we can still hear today, echoing in the silent halls of museums and in the DNA that lingers quietly in some of us. If ancient bones provide the framework for a vanished world, it is the invisible muscles, now lost to time, that truly animate the story of Neanderthal strength. Their skeletons, thick and powerful, are only the beginning. Beneath skin and sinew, Neanderthals carried a living engine that remains unrivaled by modern standards. Though flesh cannot fossilize, every groove and swelling on the bones, every massive attachment point and curved ridge reveals clues about the immense muscular system that once drove these ancient humans through their harsh, unforgiving environment. Imagine a body sculpted not in the comfort of a gym, but by the relentless demands of survival. Neanderthals did not train for sport or aesthetics. Their muscles grew from necessity, shaped by the weight of daily life. Every task, hauling firewood, dragging prey across frozen ground, fashioning shelters from heavy stone and wood, was a trial of strength. Anthropologists studying their skeletons are consistently astonished by the size and development of the muscle attachment sites, which are far larger and more pronounced than in modern Homo sapiens. This is not a small difference. The cross-sectional area of a Neanderthal's upper arm or thigh could double that of the average person today, even surpassing elite athletes in sheer bulk and density. Reconstructing the true extent of this muscular power is a challenge that has driven scientists and artists alike. Computer models layer virtual muscle onto fossilized bone, mapping each tendon and fiber according to what the evidence allows. Reconstructions in museums and documentaries often depict Neanderthals with a broad, compact torso, shoulders like boulders, and limbs thick with muscle, a living testament to a life where weakness meant struggle. This is not artistic license. It is a conclusion drawn from cold, measurable facts. For Neanderthals, muscle mass was not an advantage, but a necessity, as vital as fire or stone tools. The arms of a Neanderthal, for example, were remarkably strong, capable of generating enormous force with every movement. The very structure of the humerus and radius, the upper and lower arm bones, suggests powerful biceps and triceps, as well as immense forearm strength. Modern experiments, where athletes and climbers attempt to replicate Neanderthal activities such as spear throwing or stone tool making, show just how much more muscle would be required to match their daily routines. Even simple tasks like cutting meat, scraping hides, or shaping flint tools become strenuous when performed at the scale and repetition Neanderthals endured. Their grip was formidable, strong enough to crush, twist, and hold with unyielding determination. Their legs were equally impressive. The femur or thigh bone is both thicker and denser than that of modern humans, supporting massive quadriceps and gluteal muscles. These lower limbs could power uphill climbs, short sprints, and the brutal, steady labor of a hunter's life. Some researchers suggest that in terms of raw lower body strength, the average Neanderthal would have rivaled today's weightlifters. Their endurance tested not in controlled bursts, but over long, arduous days. The shape of their pelvis and hips also hints at an ability to squat, lift, and carry with astonishing efficiency, balancing strength with the kind of stability needed to survive constant movement across rugged landscapes. This level of physicality, so foreign to the modern world, was not only a matter of genetics, but also relentless conditioning. From childhood, Neanderthal boys and girls were likely pressed into the rituals of gathering, building, and hunting. The demands placed on their bodies started early and never let up. There was no division between work and life. Every hour spent alive in Ice Age Europe was a form of training, a shaping of bone and muscle that made them into living engines of power and endurance. Injuries and wear patterns preserved in their skeletons suggest a lifetime of hard use, with signs of healed fractures and repeated stress reflecting the realities of a world without rest. Comparisons with modern humans are stark and humbling. Even the most dedicated athletes and laborers of today would find it nearly impossible to sustain the level of strength and resilience required for Neanderthal survival. Their hands, which could cradle a newborn as easily as they could skin a massive animal, were not only stronger, but also uniquely adapted for both precision and force. Their torsos, wrapped in thick bands of muscle, provided a powerful core that supported every lift, twist, and turn. Unlike us, Neanderthals could not afford weakness. Their very existence depended on the constant assertion of strength. The image that emerges is not of a monster or a brute, but of a perfectly adapted survivor, a being for whom every movement was purposeful and every muscle earned through necessity. Their power was not merely physical, it was a fundamental response to the world they inhabited. In the reconstructed figure of the Neanderthal, we see a body that speaks of another era, one where the line between strength and survival was razor thin, and where the power to endure shaped not only the flesh, but the very destiny of a people now lost to time. Hidden deep within the double helix, ancient secrets linger, coded messages that reveal how Neanderthals achieved their legendary strength and endurance. Long after their bones turned to stone and their voices faded, their DNA remained, embedded in the very earth where they lived, and, more surprisingly, within the genetic makeup of modern humans. As technology advanced, scientists embarked on a quest not just to recover physical remains, but to resurrect the genetic blueprint of these mysterious ancestors. The results forever changed our understanding of human capability, offering a glimpse into the hidden engines that powered the Neanderthal body. The journey into Neanderthal genetics began with painstaking work, extracting tiny fragments of DNA from bones and teeth unearthed in European caves. These fragile sequences, often damaged by time, were meticulously pieced together using the most advanced sequencing techniques available. What emerged was astonishing: a nearly complete map of the Neanderthal genome, a mirror that both reflected and contrasted with our own. The similarities were profound, yet within the differences lay the origins of traits that set Neanderthals apart. Most strikingly, the genes linked to muscular strength, energy metabolism, and resilience in the face of environmental extremes. One of the most significant findings centered on genes involved in muscle growth and repair. Neanderthals possessed unique variants of the ACTN3 gene, sometimes called the gene for speed and power, which regulates the development of fast-twitch muscle fibers. In modern athletes, this gene is associated with explosive strength and quick recovery after exertion. For Neanderthals, who lived and died by their ability to hunt, climb, and defend themselves, these genetic tweaks meant the difference between survival and failure. Their bodies could build and maintain muscle mass with exceptional efficiency, providing the foundation for their physical dominance. Another revelation was the discovery of genetic adaptations for cold resistance. Life during the Ice Age demanded bodies that could generate and retain heat, and Neanderthals delivered. Variations in genes related to fat metabolism allowed them to store energy more effectively, converting food into fuel for their powerful muscles. These adaptations helped maintain body heat during bitter winters, fueling stamina through long nights and scarce resources. Neanderthal DNA also carried changes in the UCP1 gene, which regulates the production of brown fat, a special tissue that burns calories to generate warmth. This not only kept them alive in freezing climates, but also supplied the energy needed for sustained effort and rapid recovery. Endurance, too, was written in their genes. Studies have uncovered alterations in mitochondrial DNA, the energy factories within each cell, that improved efficiency in oxygen utilization. This granted Neanderthals remarkable stamina, enabling them to travel long distances, pursue prey for hours, and endure physically punishing routines that would exhaust modern city dwellers. Their cardiovascular system, shaped by these genetic markers, supported not just bursts of power, but the relentless grind of daily life under difficult conditions. The legacy of Neanderthal DNA did not vanish with their disappearance. Instead, traces remain woven into the genomes of billions of living people, a genetic inheritance from distant encounters between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals as the two species crossed paths. Today, about 1 to 2% of the DNA in most people of Eurasian descent can be traced directly to Neanderthal ancestors. In some, this manifests as a greater propensity for muscle development, altered pain sensitivity, or increased resistance to cold. Modern research even suggests that certain immune system advantages, as well as risks for specific conditions, may have originated with Neanderthal genes, a complex legacy that highlights how much of their story lives on in us. Unlocking the Neanderthal genome has revealed more than just the roots of physical strength. It has challenged long-held ideas about what it means to be human. The old myths of a clumsy, primitive brute have faded before the precision of genetic science. Instead, we see a people uniquely adapted at the deepest biological level, equipped with a set of tools invisible to the eye, but vital for survival in a hostile world. Every adaptation, every quirk of DNA, was honed by a world of scarcity, danger, and opportunity. A silent testament to how evolution crafts survivors. As scientists continue to decode the ancient script, the secrets of Neanderthal strength and endurance grow clearer, painting a picture not just of physical superiority, but of a living bridge between past and present. The genes they carried and passed on are reminders that human history is not a straight line, but a tapestry, one where resilience, power, and adaptation have always been written into our very cells. The shaping of Neanderthal strength began not in isolation, but in a world so demanding that only those most resilient could hope to survive. To truly grasp the source of their might, one must travel back in time to an era when Europe was unrecognizable, an untamed continent locked in cycles of icy advance and brief, unpredictable thaws. Imagine endless stretches of wind-blasted tundra, valleys choked with glaciers, and forests heavy with the threat of predators at every turn. The environment was not merely a backdrop. It was an unforgiving force that sculpted every muscle, sinew, and instinct of the Neanderthal body and mind. The climate of the Ice Age was brutal and ever-changing, forcing its inhabitants into a perpetual contest against hunger and cold. Winters were long, harsh, and merciless, with temperatures plunging well below freezing for months on end. Food was scarce, and the landscape demanded relentless movement, long journeys to hunt, forage, and find safe shelter. There were few constants except the need for endurance, creativity, and physical dominance. For Neanderthals, adaptation was a matter of daily survival, a lesson repeated in every blizzard and drought, every failed hunt and narrow escape. Every aspect of Neanderthal anatomy and behavior was molded by these extremes. The heavy, compact body, the broad chest, short limbs, and massive hands helped retain precious body heat, minimizing the loss of warmth in bitter winds. Their dense bones and thick muscles were not only weapons against wild beasts, but also shields against the hazards of icy terrain. Slipping on frozen ground, wading through snow, carrying heavy loads for long distances. The structure of their noses and sinuses, wider and more voluminous than those of modern humans, acted as a natural heater, warming the frigid air before it reached the lungs. Yet the climate's demands went beyond the physical. In this perilous landscape, Neanderthals developed a suite of behaviors to cope with constant uncertainty. The need for shelter drove them to seek caves and build sturdy windbreaks, often using mammoth bones and animal hides as barriers against the elements. The scarcity of resources demanded cooperation, hunting in groups, sharing meat and fire, and working together to process and store food for leaner times. Every success was hard-earned, every mistake a lesson in survival, and every generation inherited both the scars and the strengths of those who came before. Hunting itself was a crucible in which Neanderthal strength was constantly tested and refined. Game was large, dangerous, and never guaranteed. Herds of mammoth, woolly rhinoceros, and bison roamed the ice-bound plains, prey that required not just cunning, but raw power to bring down. Neanderthals stalked these giants, often at great personal risk, relying on their strength to drive spears and axes with lethal force. Injuries were common, but so too was recovery. Their bodies healed rapidly, a testament to the relentless conditioning imposed by the land. Seasons shifted, glaciers advanced, and every cycle of hardship demanded a new level of adaptation. There was no time for complacency. A sudden freeze could wipe out a food supply. A storm could collapse a shelter or scatter a hunting party. To thrive in such a world, Neanderthals learned to read subtle signs, the patterns of migrating herds, the texture of snow underfoot, the changing color of the sky before a storm. They moved with caution and with purpose, conserving energy, but ready for sudden, explosive action when opportunity or danger appeared. Over generations, this life at the edge of endurance became written into their very biology. The genes that promoted muscle growth, efficient metabolism, and cold resistance were selected and reinforced generation after generation. The knowledge of how to build fires, how to find edible roots under snow, how to stitch together furs for warmth, became instinct as much as skill. Even their social structures evolved under these pressures, emphasizing support, care for the injured, and the sharing of burdens. In the world of the Neanderthal, survival was a communal achievement, and strength was not only measured in sinew, but in the bonds that tied one group member to another. While the Ice Age eventually receded and the Neanderthals vanished from the Earth, the legacy of that fierce environment lives on. Their story is not just about brute force, but about the forging of power through adversity, the alchemy of nature and necessity. In every Neanderthal bone, in every ancient shelter and stone tool, there is a record of countless battles fought against a world that demanded the utmost from its inhabitants. Their strength was not a gift, but a prize won over thousands of years in the wildest crucible the planet could offer. Even now, as we peer into the shadows of prehistory, the lesson endures. True strength is shaped by struggle, and those who learn to endure hardship carry within them the mark of survivors. In the fierce climate that once ruled Europe, Neanderthals became titans, molded by the ice, the wind, and the fire of a world where only the powerful could endure. The story of Neanderthal strength is not written in muscle alone, but in the legacy of their tools, a prehistoric arsenal forged by necessity, honed by ingenuity, and wielded with force that defies easy comparison. For Neanderthals, every object crafted was more than a simple extension of the hand. It was a bridge between raw power and the will to survive, between the wild elements and the brief shelter of civilization. The landscape they inhabited was harsh and unyielding, demanding not only a robust physique, but also a mind capable of transforming stone, wood, and bone into instruments of survival. Archaeologists uncovering Neanderthal sites are often struck by the abundance and diversity of these ancient tools. The signature of their craftsmanship is the Mousterian toolkit, a complex and varied collection of implements that speaks to a deep understanding of materials and an impressive dexterity. The heart of their technology was the stone flake, painstakingly struck from a larger core with strategic precision. These flakes, razor-sharp and durable, became scrapers for hides, knives for butchery, and points for hunting. Creating even a single effective tool was no simple feat. It required both vision and tremendous force. The act of striking stone against stone demands a powerful grip, a steady hand, and the strength to control shattering blows without destroying the core. Archaeologists uncovering Neanderthal sites are often struck by the abundance and diversity of these ancient tools. The signature of their craftsmanship is the Mousterian toolkit, a complex and varied collection of implements that speaks to a deep understanding of materials and an impressive dexterity. The heart of their technology was the stone flake, painstakingly struck from a larger core with strategic precision. These flakes, razor-sharp and durable, became scrapers for hides, knives for butchery, and points for hunting. Creating even a single effective tool was no simple feat. It required both vision and tremendous force. The act of striking stone against stone demands a powerful grip, a steady hand, and the strength to control shattering blows without destroying the core. But Neanderthal tools went far beyond the basic. They shaped hand axes with symmetrical elegance, blades that could split bone or sinew with surgical precision. Some tools bore signs of hafting, handles attached with sinew and plant fibers, showing a sophistication that would have required not only clever design, but also the ability to manipulate strong, often resistant materials. Attaching a stone point to a wooden spear, for example, required splitting hardwoods, carving precise grooves, and binding them so tightly that only the strongest hands could have managed it. The finished weapons were not just sharp, but heavy and robust, demanding strength both to craft and to use effectively. The spear itself, perhaps the iconic Neanderthal weapon, was a marvel of ancient engineering. Unlike later, lighter throwing spears, Neanderthal spears were thick and heavy, designed for close-range thrusting rather than distant throws. To drive such a weapon into the hide of a massive animal like a bison or mammoth called for explosive force and complete control. Skills born of endless practice and a body conditioned for impact. Experiments by modern researchers using reconstructed spears and animal carcasses revealed just how demanding this task was. Few today can replicate the feat without extraordinary effort and physical conditioning. Yet their arsenal was not limited to offensive weapons. Neanderthals created powerful hammers and anvils to break open bones and extract the precious marrow within, a critical source of calories. These tasks required immense grip strength and repeated forceful motions. The scars and notches left on bone remains speak to this ancient labor, each mark a testament to hands that could withstand impact after impact without yielding. Even the task of scraping hides, turning the rough pelts of Ice Age beasts into clothing and shelter, was an ordeal, one that wore down tools and fingers alike, demanding not only stamina, but also remarkable dexterity and patience. The ingenuity of Neanderthal technology extended into their daily lives. They created awls and needles, likely used to pierce hides and thread sinew, suggesting a level of fine motor skill that belied the stereotype of the clumsy brute. The ability to shape, modify, and repair tools required a keen eye and subtle control, further evidence that their power was matched by an unexpected delicacy. This union of force and finesse is preserved in the microscopic traces left on tools, the polish from repeated use, and the intricate patterns of wear that reveal how objects were gripped, twisted, and pressed into service. Their tools also reveal the social dimension of Neanderthal life. The sharing of knowledge, the teaching of technique, and the communal effort required to produce and maintain a toolkit point to a culture where skill and strength were passed from hand to hand. The artifacts left behind are not only markers of individual ability, but of a community bound together by necessity and shared craft. Each new discovery, an unusually shaped scraper, a spear point worn smooth by use, offers another glimpse into a world where survival depended on the perfect balance of muscle, mind, and tradition. The arsenal of the prehistoric fighter was, in every sense, an extension of self. For Neanderthals, tools were not merely objects, but answers to the relentless challenges of the Ice Age. Every blade, hammer, and spear was forged in the crucible of need, shaped by hands both strong and skillful, and wielded with a determination that speaks across the millennia. In the silent fields and shadowed caves where these tools are found, the memory of Neanderthal power still lingers, an enduring echo of a people who mastered not only their world, but themselves. food was never simply gathered in the world of the Neanderthal. It was hunted, claimed, and often fought for in moments that demanded every reserve of physical and mental strength. Their approach to survival was shaped by a landscape teeming with enormous, dangerous creatures. Woolly mammoths, bison, wild horses, and massive deer roamed the plains and forests, presenting both opportunity and peril. The success of each hunt determined not just an individual's fate, but the well-being of the entire group. As a result, Neanderthals evolved a way of life where cooperation, ingenuity, and collective force were as essential as the power packed into their own muscles. Archaeological evidence reveals a story of hunters who understood their environment with an intimacy few modern people can imagine. Tracks in ancient mud, clusters of broken bones, and the scattered remains of encampments hint at organized strategies and shared knowledge passed down through generations. Neanderthal groups did not simply chase after game in isolation. They moved as coordinated teams, planning ambushes, driving herds toward natural traps, and encircling prey in carefully orchestrated silence. Each member played a role, from scouts to drivers to those poised for the final, dangerous engagement. The weapons they carried were formidable, designed for both shock and endurance. Unlike the slender, aerodynamic projectiles favored by later humans, Neanderthal spears were thick, weighty, and meant for close-quarters confrontation. These were not tools for throwing from a safe distance, but for thrusting with explosive power at the crucial moment, often just meters from a charging animal. Such hunts were fraught with risk. The bones of Neanderthals bear marks of healed injuries, broken arms, damaged ribs, crushed fingers, attesting to encounters where the hunter could easily become the hunted. Yet these scars were also badges of honor, evidence of a courage and determination that went far beyond simple instinct. In some places, ancient kill sites reveal a method almost architectural in its precision. Large animals were sometimes driven into natural traps, ravines, muddy pits, or against sheer cliffs, where their movements could be controlled and escape prevented. There, the Neanderthals worked together to bring down prey too dangerous or powerful for any single individual to manage. The energy required for such a feat is hard to fathom by modern standards. It called for not just strength, but relentless stamina, lightning-fast coordination, and the ability to read the land as well as the prey itself. Once the animal was down, the work was far from over. The task of butchering and transporting several hundred kilograms of meat and bone across long distances tested even the most robust bodies. It was common for Neanderthal groups to strip a carcass efficiently, using sharpened tools to extract every valuable resource: flesh for food, bones for tools, hides for warmth and shelter. The most nutritious parts, the rich marrow and fat stored within bones, were particularly prized, and Neanderthals became experts at splitting the toughest bones open, a process that required both powerful blows and practiced skill. But the Neanderthal diet was more varied than once assumed. Alongside the dramatic hunts, they gathered edible plants, nuts, roots, and berries, supplementing their protein-rich meals with whatever the land could provide. Archaeological sites sometimes yield evidence of cooked starchy tubers or charred seeds, suggesting a degree of culinary creativity. In some places, remnants of shellfish and small game indicate adaptivity and a willingness to exploit any available resource. Still, it was the hunt for large animals that defined their social structure, forging bonds of trust and mutual reliance within each group. Hunting was also a deeply social event, a moment when stories were shared, strategies honed, and the roles of each group member were affirmed. Success was a communal celebration, and the spoils of the hunt nourished not just bodies, but the spirit of the clan. Children observed and learned, gradually taking their places in the sequence of events that would one day depend on their own strength and courage. Elders provided guidance and wisdom, ensuring that hard-won knowledge was never lost. The world of the Neanderthal hunter was never easy. The land was unpredictable, the prey dangerous, and the margin for error vanishingly small. Yet, through the long Ice Age nights and sunlit chases across the tundra, they forged a culture of perseverance, bravery, and shared effort. In the echoes of ancient footsteps, in the battered tools and weathered bones scattered beneath the earth, the legacy of the Neanderthal hunt endures, a testament to the enduring power of human cooperation and the will to endure, no matter the odds. There are moments in prehistory when the struggle for life crystallizes into scenes of breathtaking intensity. Battles between Neanderthals and the giants that ruled the Ice Age world. These encounters were more than mere hunts. They were dangerous confrontations with beasts that towered over human forms. Each animal a moving mountain of muscle and instinct. The Neanderthals faced their era's titans not from a distance, but up close, within reach of tusk, horn, and claw, where the outcome hung by a thread spun from courage, strength, and relentless determination. Picture a vast, windswept plain at the edge of a glacier, where herds of woolly mammoths thundered across the frozen earth. These animals, protected by thick fur and curved tusks the length of a man, were the prize and peril of Neanderthal existence. Bringing down a mammoth required a feat of collective power and ingenious strategy. Archaeological evidence, scattered mammoth bones marked by cut and percussion marks found at ancient campsites, reveal scenes where entire groups worked in harmony to isolate a single animal from the herd. The process was fraught with danger. With torches and cries, the hunters drove the massive creature toward natural traps, encircling it with a wall of determined bodies armed with heavy spears. The final moments were chaotic and violent. The pounding of feet, the bellow of the mammoth, and the thunderous clash of spear against hide, each thrust demanding every ounce of strength the Neanderthals possessed. Many paid a price, as evidenced by broken bones and traumatic injuries, but the reward, a season's worth of meat, fat, and bone, was vital for the group's survival. The challenges did not end with the mammoth. Woolly rhinoceroses roamed the same bleak landscapes, armored in thick hide and wielding horns capable of shattering bone with a single blow. Unlike mammoths, these solitary giants were aggressive, unpredictable, and quick to defend themselves. To confront such a creature, Neanderthals had to act with speed and precision, working as a team to distract, harry, and finally close in for the fatal strike. The marks left by their weapons on ancient rhino bones, along with the distinctive injuries found on Neanderthal skeletons, offer silent testimony to the ferocity of these battles. It was a contest not of equals, but of desperate need and extraordinary resilience, where the line between hunter and hunted blurred at every turn. Not all dangers walked on four legs. In the shadows of caves and forests, Neanderthals sometimes crossed paths with the great predators of the age. Creatures like the cave lion, a beast larger than any living lion, with jaws powerful enough to crush bone, and a presence that dominated the night. The struggle with these animals was immediate and personal, a test of nerve and raw muscle. Traces of such encounters survive in claw marks on bones, in the defensive wounds preserved in ancient arms and legs, and in the stories carved by fear and triumph into the consciousness of every survivor. The lions and bears that prowled the same dark shelters sought not only prey, but dominance. Neanderthals, in defending their homes and their kin, became both guardians and challengers in a ceaseless contest for territory. Some of the most revealing sights are strewn with the remains of both hunter and prey, the aftermath of battles where the stakes were nothing less than life itself. In the open steppe, Neanderthals sometimes faced off with wild horses and giant deer, animals capable of lashing out with lethal force. The strategies developed in these encounters, driving herds toward natural barriers, timing the assault with the rhythms of migration, required not only muscle, but a deep understanding of animal behavior and the subtle cues of the land. The success of such hunts depended on trust, each member of the group relying on the others, every movement coordinated in the split second when opportunity met necessity. Every confrontation with these prehistoric giants shaped not only the bodies of the Neanderthals, but their spirit. The constant threat of injury or defeat forged a resilience and unity that was vital to their continued existence. Even as individuals sometimes fell in these desperate struggles, the group endured, learning, adapting, and refining their tactics for the next great challenge. These ancient battles are more than distant memories. They are woven into the bones beneath our feet and the stories etched into the earth itself. In the broken spears, shattered skulls, and layered campfires of a vanished world, the echoes of these encounters remain, a testament to the courage, ingenuity, and unyielding will of a people who met their giants face to face, and through sheer force and unity carved a place for themselves in the shadow of monsters. The silent contest between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens was never a simple tale of one species overpowering another. It was a nuanced dance between strength and cunning, endurance and adaptability, where every advantage was met with a challenge, and every shortcoming revealed a new way forward. In the cold corridors of prehistory, these two branches of humanity shared a world, each shaped by its own inheritance, yet destined to collide in the struggle for survival. Neanderthals, molded by a world of scarcity and danger, embodied raw physical power. Their bones were thicker, their muscles stronger, their bodies able to withstand cold and exertion that would exhaust most modern people. They were, in every measurable sense, superior in physical might, a trait reinforced by genetic inheritance and daily necessity. Their hands could crush and twist, their legs could carry them across rugged ground, their shoulders and backs bore the marks of endless labor. In head-to-head contests of strength, no early modern human could hope to match them. But survival in the wilds of Ice Age Eurasia demanded more than brawn. Here, Homo sapiens revealed their own, slighter advantages. Their bodies were lighter, more agile, built for efficiency rather than brute force. With longer limbs and a slimmer frame, they moved swiftly across open landscapes, traveled farther with less fatigue, and endured the long hunts that stretched for days. While Neanderthals excelled in short bursts of explosive power, Homo sapiens were masters of endurance, a difference that shaped how each hunted, migrated, and settled the land. It was in the realm of the mind, however, that the most profound differences emerged. Homo sapiens, with their slightly smaller but differently organized brains, developed symbolic language, complex social structures, and an unparalleled ability to innovate. They carved intricate tools from bone and antler, painted visions on the walls of deep caves, and wove nets, baskets, and clothing that made life in harsh climates more bearable. Their communities grew larger and more interconnected, supporting networks of trade and shared knowledge that spanned vast territories. Neanderthals, though intelligent and resourceful, lived in smaller, more isolated groups. Their tools were robust and effective, but changed little over generations, a testament to their mastery of a harsh environment, but also a sign of cultural conservatism. Where Homo sapiens adapted quickly, inventing new ways to hunt, build, and organize, Neanderthals refined what already worked. This difference in flexibility, in the ability to learn and adapt at speed, became decisive as climates shifted and competition intensified. In their encounters, Homo sapiens brought more than new tools and tactics. They brought new ways of thinking. They learned to cooperate across larger groups, to share ideas and resources, to plan for the distant future. Their art and rituals hinted at a sense of identity that transcended immediate survival, binding people together with stories, beliefs, and dreams. In times of crisis, these bonds allowed Homo sapiens to reorganize, to change direction, to invent solutions where none had existed before. But the victory of one over the other was never absolute. Recent discoveries reveal that the two groups interacted, exchanged genes, and perhaps even shared moments of understanding and partnership. The legacy of Neanderthal strength lingers in the DNA of billions, a silent reminder that they were never simply outcompeted or replaced. In some ways, they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered, but not erased. Their mark is still present, visible in traits of resilience, immunity, and even physical ability among people living today. What changed the course of history was not a single contest of might, but 1,000 small decisions: how to hunt, where to live, how to cope with sudden change. The lighter, more adaptable Homo sapiens used their brains and their networks to thrive, while Neanderthals, bound by their traditions and the weight of their powerful bodies, struggled to shift as quickly. The world itself changed too, with climates growing even harsher, resources shifting, and pressures mounting from all sides. In the end, it was the combination of ingenuity, adaptability, and the willingness to imagine new possibilities that tipped the balance. Where Neanderthals forged a legacy of strength, Homo sapiens rewrote the rules, using their minds as tools, their communities as shields, and their imagination as the bridge to the future. The story of their encounter is not one of defeat, but of transformation, a turning point that ensured the survival of ideas, memories, and a fragment of Neanderthal greatness in us all. Long after Neanderthals walked the frozen valleys and dense forests of Eurasia, traces of their strength remain, quietly shaping the bodies and abilities of people living today. The intermingling of Neanderthals and Homo sapiens was not a brief collision, but a gradual blending, an exchange that left lasting marks hidden in the code of our DNA. For centuries, these genetic echoes lay undetected, their influence masked by the swirl of history and the slow, relentless march of time. But now, with the power of modern genetics, scientists are uncovering the enduring legacy of our ancient cousins, a legacy that, for some, is written in muscle, bone, and endurance. The first clues came with the sequencing of the Neanderthal genome, a breakthrough that revealed a surprising truth. Nearly everyone of non-African descent carries 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. This inheritance is not just a historical curiosity, it is a living connection to the past, an invisible thread tying the present to a time when survival demanded more than wit alone. Among the thousands of genes that made the journey across millennia, several played direct roles in shaping physical abilities, resilience, and the capacity for hard labor. Certain Neanderthal gene variants have been linked to muscle development and function. Some modern individuals possess a version of the actin 3 gene, often called the sprinter's gene, which promotes fast-twitch muscle fibers and explosive strength. While these traits existed in both Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens, the Neanderthal contribution may have reinforced this capacity, giving a subtle edge to power, speed, or the ability to recover from physical exertion. In populations descended from Ice Age Europe and Asia, this legacy sometimes reveals itself in athletic prowess or the natural aptitude for activities demanding bursts of strength. There are even traces in the way some modern people heal and recover. Genes associated with rapid tissue repair, bone density, and the modulation of pain thresholds have roots in Neanderthal ancestry. These may have helped ancient humans withstand the constant physical stress of their environment, surviving injuries that would sideline the average person today. In modern life, these genetic gifts sometimes manifest as a knack for recovery, an edge in endurance sports, or simply an above-average resilience to the strains of daily living. Yet the Neanderthal legacy is not limited to muscles and bones. Certain genetic variants contribute to immune system strength, providing resistance against ancient pathogens that still circulate today. Others affect how the body processes sunlight, synthesizes vitamin D, or reacts to allergens, remnants of adaptations that were once crucial in the shifting climates of Eurasia. For some, these Neanderthal echoes are almost poetic, a reminder that the human body is a living archive, carrying not only memories and experiences, but the shadows of ancestors who faced the world with unyielding determination. In cities and villages, in athletes and laborers, in those who thrive in the cold or recover swiftly from setbacks, the spirit of Neanderthal strength persists. It is not a single trait, but a spectrum, a subtle, ever-present undercurrent shaping who we are and what we can endure. Modern science continues to explore these mysteries, mapping the complex ways ancient DNA influences present-day life. The story is far from finished. New discoveries constantly revise our understanding, revealing connections that stretch further and run deeper than anyone imagined. Yet one truth remains clear: the Neanderthal is not gone. Their endurance, their might, and their adaptability live on, inherited by the generations that followed, woven into the very fabric of humanity's ongoing story. Imagine a meeting on the threshold of time, a place where a modern human and a Neanderthal stand face to face, separated by tens of thousands of years of evolution, but united by the simple challenge of strength and endurance. The air crackles with anticipation, not as a battle of weapons, but of bodies and will, a contest shaped by two worlds, one engineered for survival in an age of stone and ice, the other adapted for life in a world of comfort, speed, and change. On one side stands the Neanderthal, compact, powerful, with a barrel chest, thick limbs, and a posture that radiates both stability and stored energy. Every movement hints at reserves of power built by a lifetime of lifting, carrying, climbing, and fighting the elements. The thick wrists and wide fingers are built for gripping rough tools and raw stone, the massive thighs for propelling over uneven ground. His skin, weathered and tough, speaks of years exposed to bitter wind, biting cold, and sun filtered through a northern sky. Opposite is the modern human, taller, lighter, with longer limbs and a build more suited to efficiency than brute force. The muscles, while toned, reflect an existence less dominated by necessity. Speed, flexibility, and adaptability are the hallmarks here. The product of distant ancestors who learned to run great distances, strategize, and endure with patience as much as power. The modern body is a marvel of optimization, shaped by choice, training, and environment. The contest begins with a feat of raw strength, lifting and carrying a massive log across rocky ground. The Neanderthal approaches with silent confidence, shoulders bunching, gripping the log as if it were merely another obstacle from daily life. The modern human strains, muscles taut, the effort visible in every trembling fiber. The weight is overwhelming for most today, but for the Neanderthal, this is within the range of ordinary necessity. Decades of moving boulders, dragging prey, and building shelters have made such tests second nature. The Neanderthal moves steadily, each step certain and grounded, the log balanced easily. Next comes endurance, a run across cold, uneven terrain, punctuated by sudden climbs and the need to leap over fallen branches. Here, the modern human finds a kind of equilibrium. The longer legs and lighter frame, the body shaped for distance and stamina, begin to show their value. Breath comes easier, the pace more sustainable. The Neanderthal, though immensely strong, is built for bursts of energy rather than hours of pursuit. Still, the relentless drive, the body's deep reserves of fuel, keep him close behind, never flagging for long. In a test of grip, the competitors must split thick bones and tear through raw hide. The Neanderthal's hands, nearly tools in their own right, make quick work of the challenge, knuckles whitening as bone gives way with practiced efficiency. The modern human manages the task, but the strain is evident. Fingers tire, wrists ache, and technique cannot fully compensate for the lack of sheer physical might. A final challenge awaits. Climbing a sheer rock face with only natural holds, no equipment but the strength in muscle and tendons. Both ascend, but in different styles. The modern human, perhaps with more finesse and calculated movements, seeks out the best path, conserving energy. The Neanderthal, however, relies on unyielding grip and core power, muscles firing like cables as the ancient body hoists itself upwards. Both reach the top, each transformed by the effort, a tie, but hard won on different terms. If there were a crowd to witness this imaginary duel, the result would not be clear-cut victory, but awe. In pure power, the Neanderthal dominates, able to lift, grip, and withstand challenges that would test even the strongest today. In endurance, the modern human's efficiency and lighter build allow for greater distances and recovery over time. Adaptability and problem-solving, honed over millennia, let the Homo sapiens find creative solutions to each obstacle, even when outmatched in strength. The analysis of such a contest reveals the truth written in bone and history. Each species mastered the world in its own way, the Neanderthal through force and resilience, the modern human through flexibility and innovation. The Neanderthal might prevail in direct feats of strength, but the modern human, given time and options, would endure. In the end, both are champions of their era, and together they tell the story of what it means to be human, how evolution sculpts bodies and minds for the landscapes they must conquer, and how the legacy of ancient power still echoes within us, ready to be awakened when challenge calls. Life in a Neanderthal community was woven from the fibers of strength, endurance, and resourcefulness, shaping not only the daily routine, but the entire rhythm of existence. The legacy of their immense power echoed through every aspect of culture, From the tools they used to the traditions they shared and the peculiar habits that marked them as a people uniquely attuned to the wild world around them. Each day began and ended with effort. The shelter, whether a cave mouth fortified with stone slabs or a windbreak crafted from mammoth bones and thick hides, was itself a monument to collective power. Constructing these refuges demanded the combined labor of many, as enormous stones and heavy timbers had to be dragged, positioned, and sometimes stacked with a precision that modern builders would envy. Every hand contributed, each person's physical might an essential thread in the communal fabric. Youngsters learned early to lift, carry, and balance, not as a chore, but as a rite of passage into the adult world. This environment fostered traditions that revolved around both necessity and ingenuity. Cooking was often a communal act, with fires built from logs hauled over great distances, and meals prepared from animals too large for one person to manage alone. The process of butchering a mammoth or a giant deer became a shared ritual, each participant wielding tools designed for both precision and power. Heavy scrapers, stone knives, and bone owls, many worn smooth from generations of use, spoke of hands that could exert force for hours without rest. Even food storage reflected their strength. Pits dug deep into frozen earth, animal skins stretched and dried over large frames, bundles of bones hung high and out of reach of scavengers. The artifacts they left behind tell stories not just of survival, but of craft and pride. Ornaments fashioned from eagle talons, shells, and brightly colored minerals were sometimes too robust for simple aesthetics. They could have served as symbols of status, tokens exchanged during gatherings, or amulets believed to channel strength and good fortune. The making and wearing of these items were acts requiring both dexterity and resilience, as well as a community-wide sense of belonging and shared identity. Children grew up in an atmosphere of mentorship and cooperation. Play often mirrored the adult world, lifting stones, mimicking the process of tool making, practicing with child-sized spears and hammers. Through such activities, the skills of the strong were passed down, not just through instruction, but by example and repetition. Elders, valued for their accumulated wisdom and enduring robustness, guided younger members in the secrets of crafting, building, and hunting. The respect for age was not based solely on knowledge, but on the ability to endure and recover, to continue contributing through strength even as years passed. Some traditions bordered on the remarkable. Evidence suggests that Neanderthals sometimes moved entire animal carcasses or heavy materials great distances, tasks that would require teams working in harmony, coordinating their strength for a common purpose. The communal effort was a celebration of shared might, cementing bonds and reinforcing the social fabric. During hard winters or lean seasons, these acts of cooperation could mean the difference between survival and hardship, giving rise to customs of sharing and mutual aid that defined the group. Rest and relaxation, when they came, also bore the imprint of physicality. Storytelling around the fire, grooming and social touch, and even the creation of pigment-based body art. These rituals were performed with the same hands that built shelters and felled giants. Songs and tales, passed from mouth to mouth, celebrated feats of endurance and clever solutions to the dangers of the land. The line between myth and memory blurred as every accomplishment became woven into a tradition of strength. Tools themselves were expressions of cultural identity. The act of shaping a spearhead or scraping a hide was as much about participating in a lineage as it was about necessity. Each toolmaker left subtle marks, unique signatures that carried across generations. Some implements became cherished possessions, repaired and refined rather than discarded, a testimony to the care and effort invested by their creators. In the details of daily life, the culture of the strong was not about brute force for its own sake, but about channeling collective energy into acts of beauty, utility, and solidarity. The Neanderthal world was one where every object, every gesture, every tradition was suffused with the quiet dignity of power honed for a purpose. The legacy of their way of life, marked by cooperation, creativity, and endurance, lingers in the human heart, a reminder that true strength is best measured not in isolation, but in the bonds it forges and the stories it leaves behind. The myths surrounding Neanderthal strength have always blurred the line between legend and reality, but recent science only deepens the sense of awe at what these ancient people could achieve, feats that now seem almost impossible for the modern human body. Around the fires of prehistory, stories must have spread about astonishing displays of power. An elder lifting boulders to dam a stream, a hunter dragging the entire hind quarter of a mammoth alone, a group clearing fallen trees after a storm in a matter of hours. These stories, far from exaggeration, are increasingly backed by the physical evidence left behind and by what we know of their world. It's difficult to comprehend the raw ability required to survive as a Neanderthal. The bones themselves tell the first part of the story. Analyses show that the average adult, even without specialized training, possessed muscle mass, grip strength, and bone density far beyond those of modern athletes. Imagine opening a frozen carcass with stone tools in sub-zero winds, breaking femurs to get at marrow, or constructing shelters from rocks that would challenge modern construction crews. These were everyday acts, labors of necessity, not choice. Some archaeological sites preserve evidence of group feats that would challenge even a team of modern strongmen. At La Ferracie in France and Kebara in Israel, Neanderthal communities buried their dead under massive slabs, each weighing hundreds of kilograms, carefully arranged in ritual order. Moving such stones would have required both advanced cooperation and remarkable power. The fact that these burials were repeated across generations hints at the development of collective techniques, perhaps the use of simple levers and ramps, but more impressively, bodies conditioned from birth to handle extreme loads. Legends abound of Neanderthals dragging enormous carcasses, entire reindeer, wild horses, or even segments of mammoths across great distances, with little more than ropes and brute strength. Wear patterns on their skeletons and the anatomical adaptations of their hands and shoulders support these tales. Modern experiments where athletes try to replicate these feats consistently fall short unless they train specifically for years and still rarely reach the same level of everyday capability. But it wasn't only about lifting or carrying. There are stories written in the earth of Neanderthals splitting the hardest bones to get to marrow, smashing them open with precision and force that leaves unmistakable marks. The tools used for this, heavy stone hammers and anvils, required both a practiced technique and a power that's hard to imagine today. One-handed, they could crush, break, and carve in ways that seem almost superhuman. The scars on their bones, too, show that this was not without cost. Healed fractures, compressed spines, and repeated joint injuries tell of lives lived at the limit, but also of bodies able to recover and keep going. tales of speed and endurance are equally remarkable. Neanderthals may have been able to sprint short distances while carrying loads that would slow even a trained soldier. Their dense bones and robust joints allowed them to leap, climb, and twist through rocky landscapes and dense forests without hesitation. Accounts based on skeletal reconstructions suggest the ability to scale cliffs, drag logs, and even move quickly on all fours when needed. In moments of crisis, fleeing predators, rescuing a trapped child, or pursuing wounded prey, the boundaries of strength and stamina were constantly pushed and sometimes redefined. Other stories, passed down as echoes in the archaeological record, hint at specialized talents, crafting tools from the hardest stones without breaking them, or enduring pain and cold for days without faltering. Some scientists believe Neanderthals could withstand injuries that would debilitate modern people, returning to the hunt or the hearth with little pause. The combination of pain tolerance, physical toughness, and communal support created legends not only of the individual, but of groups that survived the unimaginable. In the imagination, these tales become larger than life. The image of a Neanderthal single-handedly lifting boulders, battling monstrous beasts, or outlasting the fiercest storms. But in reality, these were the quiet miracles of survival, everyday triumphs over a world that demanded more than most of us will ever know. The legends are not just stories. They are windows into a reality where strength, both physical and communal, was the key to enduring what most would find impossible. In the world of the Neanderthal, the limits of the body were not barriers, but challenges to be met and, more often than not, overcome. The question of why the Neanderthals vanished, despite all their physical might, haunts the corridors of human history. For generations, their disappearance seemed a paradox. How could a species so perfectly attuned for survival, so strong and resilient, fade from the Earth while their seemingly weaker cousins endured and spread across the globe? The answer, it turns out, lies not in a single moment or catastrophe, but in a web of shifting forces. Climate, disease, the cunning of newcomers, and changes in the very fabric of society. As the Ice Age began its unpredictable retreat and advance, the world the Neanderthals knew was transformed. Once familiar hunting grounds became forests or flooded plains. Herds of large game animals grew scarcer, and the weather alternated between brutal cold and sudden, unexpected warmth. Neanderthals, with bodies built for cold and power, faced increasing hardship as the environment demanded new strategies, flexibility, innovation, and the ability to quickly adapt to rapid changes. The skills that had carried them through thousands of winters began to falter against a landscape no longer shaped by old rules. Into this changing world came another kind of survivor, Homo sapiens. Lighter, more numerous, and endlessly inventive, these newcomers brought with them a different approach to life. Where Neanderthals had perfected their way of living over generations, sapiens improvised and evolved, building networks that stretched across valleys and mountains. They traded ideas as easily as they shared resources, their languages and symbols weaving larger and more connected societies. In this contest, physical strength was no longer the only advantage. Those who could organize, plan, and communicate had the upper hand. Disease, too, played its silent role. As populations mingled, new illnesses spread, sometimes devastating those with less genetic resistance. The immune systems of Neanderthals, honed for their own world, struggled to cope with pathogens carried by their Homo sapiens relatives. What might have been a mild sickness for one group could become a crisis for the other, further weakening already vulnerable communities. Even as they fought for survival in the forests and hills, invisible enemies eroded their numbers. Social change was just as significant as physical and biological challenges. While Neanderthal groups were close-knit and deeply bonded, their numbers were small, often isolated from one another. Sapiens, by contrast, formed larger and more flexible bands, able to pool resources, adapt roles, and respond to threats with collective action. The very structure of their societies made it easier to recover from setbacks, share knowledge, and innovate in the face of uncertainty. In a world where survival depended on adaptation, the ability to change quickly became more valuable than raw power alone. As the centuries passed, the odds tipped further. Scarcity of food, shrinking territories, and growing competition forced Neanderthals into ever more marginal lands. They became specialists in a world that no longer rewarded specialization. The heavy build that once preserved heat and powered hunts became a burden as resources dwindled. Their remarkable strength was no longer enough to guarantee a future. The story of Neanderthal disappearance is not a tragedy of failure, but of transition. They did not simply vanish, they were absorbed, in part, into the new world their rivals were creating. Their genes live on, scattered in the DNA of people today, silent witnesses to ancient resilience. The last true Neanderthal bands, huddled in caves on the coasts of Europe or the mountains of Central Asia, left behind more than bones and tools. They left questions, lessons, and a legacy of endurance. In the end, the Neanderthals lost, not because they were weak, but because the world changed faster than even the strongest could adapt. The contest between muscle and mind, between tradition and innovation, played out not in a single battle, but over generations. As new ideas and ways of life swept across the continent, the titans of the Ice Age faded into legend. Their story a reminder that survival is never only about strength, but about the ability to change, to connect, and to imagine a future beyond the next horizon. Deep beneath the layers of earth and time, scattered across caves and ancient riverbanks, lie artifacts that whisper of a power almost impossible to believe. Each discovery challenges our expectations, casting the Neanderthals in a new, awe-inspiring light. These are not merely objects of survival, but monuments to a strength and determination that have few parallels in the history of humankind. Archaeological finds attributed to Neanderthals continue to astonish even seasoned scientists, not just for their ingenuity, but for the sheer physical force required to create and use them. Among the most remarkable of these finds are the massive stone tools unearthed at sites like La Chapelle-aux-Sens and Le Moustier in France, or the dense bone hammers found in caves from Gibraltar to the Caucasus. Some of the hand axes, cleavers, and choppers are so large and heavy that modern researchers can barely wield them for more than a few minutes at a time. Crafted from the hardest available rocks, they required not only skillful knapping, but the ability to strike with powerful, controlled blows, splitting boulders and shaping edges that would endure the rigors of Ice Age life. The wear patterns on these tools reveal a story of endless labor, butchering gigantic animals, breaking bones to access nutritious marrow, and working raw materials that would exhaust most people today. Perhaps even more astonishing are the immense mammoth bones and skulls found deliberately arranged in circular patterns at sites like Molodova in Ukraine. These mammoth bone huts are among the oldest known examples of large-scale construction in prehistory. The effort involved in gathering, transporting, and assembling these colossal bones defies modern comparison. Even with teams and advanced equipment, moving such weight is a formidable challenge. For Neanderthals, it was a feat accomplished with nothing but rope, wood, and the collective strength of their group, an act of will as much as muscle, transforming the bones of giants into shelter from the relentless wind. Another striking example comes from burial sites. In places like Shanidar Cave in Iraq, Neanderthal graves are often capped with enormous stones purposefully placed to protect the remains of the departed. These stones weigh hundreds of kilograms and were moved with care and precision, often into difficult and awkward positions within the darkness of underground chambers. The act was not simply functional, but symbolic, a sign of respect or ritual that demanded strength, patience, and unity. Artifacts of personal adornment also hint at physical feats. Large animal teeth drilled to become pendants, thick shells carved into beads, and eagle talons worked into jewelry all required not just artistic intent, but the stamina and dexterity to bore through stubborn material with the simplest of stone tools. Some of these pieces bear the marks of countless hours of effort, a test of both endurance and meticulous strength. Then there are the enigmatic deep cave constructions, rings and arrangements of stalagmites, found deep in darkness far from any natural light, as at Bruniquel Cave in France. These structures required the breaking and carrying of tons of mineral columns, all done by torchlight and the touch of bare hands. The scale and precision of such work speak not only to social cooperation, but to the ability to persist in challenging, claustrophobic environments for extended periods, moving objects that would defeat the untrained and unconditioned. All these traces left on the earth are more than archaeological puzzles. They are reminders of a kind of life that demanded strength at every turn. The Neanderthal world was one where creativity and muscle walked hand in hand, where every artifact tells a story of vision fueled by power. These discoveries are silent witnesses, enduring through millennia to remind us of what it once took to thrive, a combination of skill, endurance, and a level of physical might rarely seen since. They are monuments not only to survival, but to the will to leave a mark, an echo of hands that could shape both stone and destiny. The 21st century has opened a new chapter in the story of Neanderthal strength, shifting the quest from caves and ancient bones to laboratories, gyms, and even the digital world. No longer content to simply measure and marvel, scientists, athletes, and experimental archaeologists are now determined to bring Neanderthal power to life, to test, reconstruct, and truly understand what it meant to possess such physical capabilities. The result is a series of daring experiments and creative simulations that not only illuminate the past, but challenge the limits of the present. Some of the most eye-opening experiments take place in the realm of biomechanics. Using digital scans of Neanderthal skeletons, researchers build sophisticated models, virtual bodies layered with hypothetical muscles, tendons, and ligaments, all based on the clues left in fossilized bone. By running these models through simulated movements, from swinging a hammerstone to carrying loads across rough terrain, scientists can estimate the amount of force a Neanderthal arm or leg might generate. The numbers are staggering. For many actions, the estimated strength surpasses that of the average modern human by wide margins, sometimes even rivaling or exceeding elite athletes and powerlifters. Yet numbers alone are not enough. To truly understand the demands of Neanderthal life, some researchers turn to experimental archaeology, recruiting modern volunteers, often athletes or skilled craftspeople, to replicate ancient tasks using authentic materials and tools. These volunteers attempt everything from butchering large animal carcasses with stone knives to building shelters from massive bones and hides, or breaking animal femurs for marrow with heavy stone hammers. Even those in peak physical condition report rapid fatigue, sore hands, and newfound respect for the endurance and raw power Neanderthal daily life required. In one well-known experiment, competitive strongmen and weightlifters tried to transport mammoth bones and stones similar to those found in Ice Age sites. The task proved nearly impossible without teamwork and training, emphasizing just how exceptional Neanderthal collective strength must have been. Other researchers focus on the nuances of Neanderthal movement. Using motion capture technology and wearable sensors, they study the differences in gait, posture, and grip between modern people and reconstructed Neanderthal forms. These experiments reveal unique adaptations. Neanderthal bodies were not just stronger, but often more stable and energy efficient in specific motions, like squatting, lifting, or manipulating heavy objects. Their robust hands and broad shoulders allowed them to grip tools and weapons with a force modern humans can barely imagine, yet with surprising finesse. Environmental simulations take these efforts even further. Some teams recreate the climate of the Ice Age, exposing volunteers to cold, hunger, and the psychological strain of constant physical labor. Others model entire groups in controlled settings, testing how collective strength and cooperation might have played out in hunts, construction, or survival scenarios. In every case, the conclusion is the same. The daily world of the Neanderthal was a crucible in which only the most resilient and adaptable could hope to thrive. Digital reconstructions and even virtual reality have become tools in this pursuit. By immersing scientists and the public alike in interactive simulations of Neanderthal life, researchers allow us to see through ancient eyes, building a fire in a howling blizzard, fending off predators, or scaling rocky cliffs with heavy loads in tow. These reconstructions not only inform but inspire, inviting us to experience a world where every action was a testament to strength, skill, and the ability to endure. Ultimately, the experiments of the 21st century reveal more than numbers or isolated feats. They offer a window into the lived reality of our powerful cousins. Each test and simulation underscores the gulf between modern comfort and Ice Age necessity, highlighting just how much was demanded of those who survived in the shadow of glaciers and giants. The journey to reconstruct Neanderthal strength is ongoing, a living dialogue between past and present that continues to reshape our sense of what it means to be human. Through science, sweat, and imagination, we are finally beginning to feel the weight of their world, an inheritance both humbling and inspiring. In the modern world, surrounded by the comforts of technology and convenience, it is rare to encounter the kind of raw, unyielding strength that once defined the Neanderthal way of life. Yet echoes of that ancient power still surface. In the straining muscles of weightlifters, the relentless drive of endurance athletes, and the fearless resolve of mountaineers. These individuals, through passion or profession, push their bodies to limits that resonate with the physical reality faced daily by our prehistoric cousins. In their stories, training, and triumphs, we find a living reflection of Neanderthal might. considered the elite powerlifters and strongmen who dedicate years to perfecting their bodies for feats of extraordinary force. These athletes, through rigorous training, develop a density of muscle and bone that rivals anything seen in the fossil record. When they deadlift hundreds of kilograms, flip massive tires, or carry yokes loaded with crushing weight, they perform tasks not unlike those that Neanderthals tackled as a matter of course. Moving boulders, dragging animal carcasses, and building shelters from raw materials. The biomechanics of their movements, the thickening of tendons, and the adaptation of joints under stress mirror what archaeologists infer from ancient skeletons. Power born not merely of size, but of resilience, repetition, and necessity. Endurance athletes, ultramarathon runners, Arctic explorers, and alpine climbers also carry a piece of this ancient legacy. The Neanderthal world demanded stamina as much as it did strength. Those who run for days across deserts or scale icy mountains with packs nearly their own body weight echo the relentless energy required to hunt, migrate, and survive in the Pleistocene wilderness. Their ability to adapt to extreme temperatures, manage fatigue, and push beyond the threshold of pain speaks to the same blend of mental and physical endurance that marked Neanderthal life. It is in the shared suffering of exhaustion and the elation of overcoming obstacles that modern athletes and ancient survivors find common ground. Mountain climbers, in particular, embody the union of strength, balance, and calculated risk that was once the daily reality of Neanderthals. When climbers pull themselves up sheer rock faces, gripping tiny holds with powerful fingers and supporting their full weight through core and limb, they rely on abilities that would have served well on Ice Age cliffs and ravines. The sense of community, the trust in partners, and the willingness to endure hardship all echo the teamwork and perseverance needed to face mammoths, predators, and hostile weather. Even outside the realm of extreme sports, laborers who work in mines, forests, or on construction sites channel similar reserves of strength and coordination. The repetitive lifting, carrying, and manipulating of heavy materials, often in challenging environments, demands a fortitude that would not be out of place among Neanderthals. Studies have shown that such physically demanding lifestyles can even result in changes to bone structure and muscle attachment points, modern echoes of the adaptations that once defined an entire species. Yet there is a crucial distinction. For today's athletes and workers, the choice to pursue strength is often voluntary, driven by personal ambition, competition, or necessity. For Neanderthals, it was the baseline, the unavoidable demand of simply staying alive. The rituals of training, recovery, and nutrition that fill the schedules of modern strength athletes mirror the cycles of effort and rest that must have governed ancient communities. Both rely on the support of others, on shared knowledge, and on the pride that comes from overcoming what once seemed impossible. Through the lens of modern achievement, we see the contours of a past in which every life was an act of extraordinary effort. The parallels between Neanderthals and today's strongest and most resilient individuals are not merely physical, but cultural, testaments to a universal human spirit that persists across millennia. As we cheer for records broken and summits reached, we honor not just present triumph, but the memory of ancestors who forged their destiny through strength, endurance, and the unbreakable will to survive. The psychological landscape of the Neanderthal is a subject as fascinating as their physical strength. a realm shaped not just by the demands of survival, but by the very architecture of their bodies. To imagine the inner world of these Ice Age titans is to consider what it means to live each day in a body of almost unimaginable power, and how such power might mold mind, spirit, and social bonds. Strength was not merely an advantage, it was a fact of existence. From an early age, every Neanderthal would have been acutely aware of their own capability. Simple acts, lifting stones, shaping tools, carrying firewood, were performed with ease, reinforcing a deep sense of agency. In a world where action and result were closely linked, confidence in one's own body must have been instinctive, perhaps even woven into their identity. This embodied assurance likely gave rise to a psychology marked by directness, practicality, and an orientation toward tangible solutions. Yet the experience of strength also brought responsibility. In small, close-knit groups, the survival of all depended on the physical contribution of each member. A Neanderthal's sense of self-worth may have been inseparable from their role in the collective. The ability to hunt, build, and protect was not simply a personal achievement, but a communal necessity. This dynamic may have fostered a culture where cooperation, reliability, and mutual respect were the pillars of social life. Individuals would have needed to balance self-reliance with the humility to accept help and the willingness to share effort and risk. The psychology of such a society would also have been shaped by frequent challenges and dangers. The ever-present threat of injury, hunger, or predation required vigilance, quick decision-making, and resilience in the face of adversity. Neanderthals may have developed a certain stoicism, a capacity to endure discomfort and pain, to accept setbacks as part of the natural order. Physical scars, like broken bones that had healed or joints worn by years of labor, would be seen not as weaknesses, but as testaments to survival and experience, sources of quiet pride. Emotional bonds, too, may have been profoundly influenced by the realities of strength and interdependence. Evidence of care for the sick and elderly, of healed injuries and thoughtful burials suggests a people for whom empathy was essential. To be strong was to protect and to nurture, to bear the burdens of others and find meaning in doing so. The rituals of daily life, cooking, crafting, sharing stories, were likely tinged with gratitude for each member's efforts and sacrifices. At the same time, the weight of responsibility and the closeness of the group could give rise to intense emotions. Pride in one's strength and achievements would be balanced by frustration at limitations, fear in the face of overwhelming obstacles, and sorrow at the loss of kin. The psychology of the Neanderthal was thus likely a tapestry of confidence and vulnerability, resilience and tenderness, shaped by the ebb and flow of collective struggle. Modern parallels can be found among those who live by their physical prowess, athletes, rescuers, laborers, who describe a deep connection to their own bodies, a respect for effort and pain, and a sense of belonging that comes from shared challenge. The Neanderthal psyche, shaped by a world that demanded everything, was not simply one of dominance, but of grounded presence, loyalty, and the unwavering will to persist. Ultimately, the character and spirit of these ancient titans remind us that true strength, both physical and psychological, is born from the interplay of necessity, connection, and the courage to face whatever each new day may bring. Their legacy lingers not only in muscle and bone, but in the quiet determination and empathy that have always defined what it means to be truly human. In the ever-evolving world of science, the story of the Neanderthal is constantly being rewritten. Each year brings new discoveries, some unearthed from the depths of ancient caves, others unlocked in the hidden code of DNA or revealed through cutting-edge technology. These breakthroughs have overturned old assumptions and opened our eyes to the profound complexity, ingenuity, and adaptability of a people once dismissed as little more than brutes. The narrative of the Neanderthal is no longer static. It is a living chronicle, growing richer and more human with every revelation. Recent years have seen the emergence of remarkable finds that challenge the boundaries between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. Archaeologists working in Denisova Cave in Siberia uncovered a single finger bone, later revealed through genetic analysis to belong to a hybrid child with both Neanderthal and Denisovan ancestry. This discovery illuminated a tangled web of interactions among ancient human groups, proving that Neanderthals were not evolutionary dead ends, but part of a dynamic, interconnected world. Elsewhere, researchers have found compelling evidence of symbolic behavior, artifacts that force a reconsideration of Neanderthal cognition. In Spain, scientists discovered abstract cave paintings and carefully arranged shells stained with pigments, predating the arrival of modern humans. These objects suggest a capacity for symbolism and creativity that rivals anything seen among early Homo sapiens, inviting us to rethink the origins of art, language, and spirituality. It is no longer possible to draw a clear line between us and them based on intellect or imagination. Advancements in genetics have further blurred the boundaries. The ability to sequence ancient DNA with increasing precision has revealed a surprising degree of interbreeding, not just with Homo sapiens, but with other archaic humans. Traits such as immunity, skin adaptation, and even aspects of metabolism have been traced directly to Neanderthal ancestry. These genetic echoes continue to shape the health and abilities of people alive today, a vivid reminder that the story of human evolution is one of fusion, not replacement. Technological leaps have also played a part in changing our view. High-resolution CT scans, 3D printing, and virtual reality allow scientists to reconstruct Neanderthal bodies and behaviors with unprecedented accuracy. Motion capture experiments reveal how these ancient people moved, worked, and hunted, while isotopic analysis of bones paints a picture of diverse diets that included plants, seafood, and even cooked foods. Each new technique peels back another layer of mystery, replacing caricature with detail and nuance. Perhaps the most profound shift has come in how we interpret the meaning of strength and adaptability. Where once Neanderthals were seen as victims of their own limitations, now we recognize them as pioneers, innovators who mastered fire, crafted complex tools, and built social networks that stretched across continents. Their disappearance is understood not as a simple story of defeat, but as part of a broader process of merging, adaptation, and survival. New evidence suggests that some Neanderthal populations persisted far longer than once thought, coexisting with Homo sapiens and influencing the course of prehistory. As research continues, the Neanderthal emerges not as a static relic, but as a dynamic participant in the great human journey. Each discovery reveals more of their wisdom, adaptability, and spirit, drawing us closer to the truth that the divide between ancient and modern is far less than we imagined. The scientific quest to understand them is also a journey inward, a chance to rediscover lost aspects of ourselves and to appreciate the resilience and creativity that define our shared heritage. With every headline and every finding, the story of Neanderthal power and humanity grows ever more extraordinary, forever inviting us to look deeper, wonder more, and celebrate the rich tapestry of our collective past. The image of the Neanderthal has long transcended the boundaries of science, finding fertile ground in the collective imagination of filmmakers, authors, and artists. Over the past century, as archaeologists pieced together the story of these powerful ancestors, popular culture eagerly seized the narrative, shaping it into forms that reflected both our curiosity and our anxieties. The Neanderthal became a mirror, sometimes distorting, sometimes clarifying, through which we have explored our own origins, strengths, and limitations. In the early days of cinema and literature, Neanderthals were often portrayed as the ultimate cavemen, figures of brute force, comic simplicity, and primitive instinct. They shuffled across the screen, wielding massive clubs, clad in animal skins, and speaking only in guttural grunts. Classic films like 1,000,000 Years BC or the many pulp adventure novels of the 20th century established a template: the Neanderthal as a lumbering, almost subhuman being, a foil to the more refined and clever modern human. These early depictions owed more to fantasy and stereotype than to archaeology, yet they captured the public's fascination with the mystery of lost worlds and ancient titans. As scientific understanding grew, some creators began to reimagine the Neanderthal with more nuance. Novels such as William Golding's The Inheritors and Jean M. Auel's The Clan of the Cave Bear brought a sense of dignity and complexity to these ancient people. Their characters were no longer mindless brutes, but thoughtful, emotional beings, capable of love, sorrow, ingenuity, and even art. In these stories, Neanderthal strength was not only a physical attribute, but a metaphor for resilience and endurance in the face of a changing world. Their struggles, fears, and hopes became relatable, their differences less alien. Modern cinema and documentaries have further transformed the Neanderthal image. High-definition reconstructions, CGI renderings, and forensic artistry strive to present these ancient humans as they truly were: powerfully built, but also expressive, adaptable, and profoundly human. Films and television series now feature Neanderthals as complex characters, survivors, artists, parents, and leaders, navigating a world on the brink of change. Their strength, while still celebrated, is framed within a broader context of intelligence, community, and survival. Yet the divide between fantasy and reality remains. Popular media often delights in exaggerating Neanderthal abilities, imagining them as superhuman warriors or tragic victims, depending on the needs of the story. Comic books, animated shows, and even advertisements use the Neanderthal as a symbol, sometimes for brute force and stubbornness, other times for misunderstood gentleness. This flexible image reflects our own uncertainties about the past, as well as a desire to see ourselves in those who came before. The ongoing fascination with Neanderthal strength is itself revealing. In an era where physical challenges have become the domain of sport and spectacle, the Neanderthal serves as a reminder of the primal roots of human power. They embody both the potential and the cost of living in a world where every day was a test, every act of survival a display of strength and ingenuity. At its best, the cultural depiction of Neanderthals helps bridge the gap between ancient and modern, inviting empathy and respect for those who shaped our shared story. At its worst, it risks reinforcing old myths, overlooking the complexity and humanity of these remarkable people. Ultimately, the image of the Neanderthal, on screen, in print, and in our imagination, remains a canvas upon which each generation paints its hopes, fears, and dreams about what it means to be strong, to endure, and to belong. The story of the Neanderthals is not only a tale of vanished power, but a living source of inspiration for the modern world. As we decipher their bones, their tools, and the faint signatures in our own DNA, we discover that the lessons of these ancient titans reach far beyond the boundaries of prehistory. They offer us a model of resilience, adaptability, and the kind of inner and outer strength that can endure even the harshest trials. In their story, we find not just echoes of the past, but guidance for the future. Wisdom forged in the crucible of survival, waiting to be inherited by anyone willing to listen. One of the most vital lessons lies in the relationship between body and environment. Neanderthals were masters at reading the landscape, adapting their movements, habits, and communities to whatever the world demanded. Their robust physiques and remarkable endurance remind us that true strength is not built overnight, but honed through persistent effort, daily challenge, and a willingness to face discomfort head-on. In an era where comfort often replaces adversity, their legacy is a call to seek challenge, to embrace physical effort as a path not just to health, but to character. Equally important is the lesson of adaptability. Neanderthals endured drastic swings in climate, shifting food sources, and endless hazards, yet they continued to innovate, crafting new tools, inventing ways to build shelter, and finding solutions in the face of scarcity. Their example urges us to remain flexible and open to change, to see each obstacle as an opportunity for growth. Whether facing personal challenges or global upheavals, the ability to adapt, to rethink, to reinvent, to keep moving may be the truest inheritance from our ancient relatives. Community and cooperation formed the foundation of Neanderthal life. No individual, however strong, could survive alone in the brutal world they inhabited. The evidence of shared labor, care for the injured, and collective rituals shows that resilience is most powerful when it is woven together. For us, their story is a reminder to seek out connection, to support one another in times of hardship, and to recognize the strength found in unity and shared purpose. The bonds we form today, whether in families, teams, or communities, are modern echoes of the alliances that once turned the tide against famine, predators, and bitter cold. The Neanderthal legacy also speaks to the courage to endure. Despite daunting odds and relentless trials, these ancient people persisted. They left behind a record not only of what they accomplished, but of the spirit with which they faced life's uncertainties. In moments of pain, exhaustion, or doubt, their story invites us to dig deeper, to find reserves of determination and grit we might never otherwise discover. True strength is measured not just in muscles or achievements, but in the ability to get up and try again. An inheritance as relevant now as it was in the shadows of the Ice Age. History has not always been kind to their memory. For generations, they were cast as mere footnotes, symbols of a primitive age swept aside by progress. But the tide has turned, and now we see them not as failures, but as fellow travelers. Ancestors who endured against impossible odds, who shaped the world with their hands and their will, and who still walk beside us in the silent language of our genes. Their immortality is not in monuments or epic tales, but in the subtle gifts they left behind: resilience, adaptability, and the quiet courage to face the unknown. As we look to the future, the story of the Neanderthal is far from finished. New discoveries await in the unexplored corners of the earth and the hidden recesses of our own biology. Each breakthrough adds another thread to the tapestry, deepening our understanding and expanding the boundaries of what we thought possible. The legacy of these ancient titans reminds us that history is alive, a living dialogue between what was, what is, and what might yet be. In remembering the Neanderthals, we remember ourselves, shaped by hardship, transformed by endurance, and bound together by a longing for meaning that stretches across ages. Their journey was not just their own, it is ours as well, a shared path through darkness and light, uncertainty and discovery. In every act of courage, every moment of connection, every leap into the unknown, the spirit of the Titans endures. Thus, their strength is not lost, but transformed, woven into the ongoing saga of humankind. The Neanderthals live on in the story we tell together, a testament to the enduring power of memory, the immortality of true resilience, and the eternal promise that, even as ages pass, the way of the Titans is never truly forgotten. Finally, there is wisdom in honoring our connection to the natural world. The Neanderthal sense of place, living in harmony with the seasons, moving with herds, and respecting the cycles of nature, offers a quiet lesson for a time when that connection is too often lost. To live with awareness, to respect both our limits and our potential, and to remember that we are part of a larger story, these are gifts that the ancient Titans have left for us. In their strength, we find the roots of our own resilience. In their endurance, we discover the courage to meet tomorrow's challenges. And in their story, a tapestry of effort, loss, triumph, and adaptation, we are reminded that the past is never truly gone. The spirit of the Neanderthal lives on in every act of perseverance, every moment of unity, and every leap into the unknown. Their greatest gift is the enduring lesson that, whatever our world becomes, the power to survive and to thrive has always been part of what it means to be human. The Neanderthals, long vanished from the earth, have never truly left the story of humanity. Their legacy endures not just in ancient bones or scattered tools, but in the invisible threads of memory, strength, and resilience woven through our very existence. They were titans of their age, shaped by ice, fire, and the relentless pressure of survival. And their echoes still ripple through the corridors of time, inviting us to wonder, to question, and to seek ourselves in their shadow. As we reach the end of this journey into their world, the outlines of the Neanderthal remain both vivid and elusive. Science has revealed so much: the breadth of their physical power, the sophistication of their culture, the endurance etched into every bone. Yet for every mystery solved, new questions arise. What did they dream as they gazed into the flickering firelight? What secrets did they whisper in the depths of their caves? What wisdom was lost when their voices fell silent? And what part of it endures, hidden in the rhythms of our own lives? The power of the Neanderthals lies not only in their remarkable bodies, but in the very fact that their story refuses to fade. Through each new discovery, an ancient tool, a fragment of DNA, a child's fossilized footprint, we are reminded of the vastness of human possibility, the ways in which the past continues to shape the present. In their strength and in their struggles, in their moments of triumph and of loss, the Neanderthals offer a mirror for our own hopes and fears, our achievements and our limitations.